Morena, good morning everyone. Welcome Deputy Mayor Angela, Kesh and Councillor Jeff online. We now have our quorum and I'll declare the meeting open. If we could start with our karakia. Kia inoi tātou, tuia e runga, tuia e raro, tuia e roto, tuia e waho, tuia ne kaya mahi o te kaunihira o Kiriroa. Whaia te iti kahurangi, kia u, kia mau, kia ita, hunge, huie, tae kie. And a very happy Halloween to everyone. Thank you to Amy and the team for the decorations in the chamber today. For those of you online, you might not get the full appreciation of what we have here in our chamber, and perhaps when we have some questions from Councillor Andrew Bidder, you'll be able to see him as his beautiful 20-year-old state. But enjoy the trick-or-treating, both at the meeting and outside of it today, and have a very spooktacular day. All right. Notably, though, it's also Grandparents' Week, and I think that that's a really great opportunity for us to celebrate the immeasurable value grandparents bring to our families and our lives. There, in fact, are some sitting around the chamber today, and I think it's a really great time for us to express our gratitude and appreciation to Hamilton grandparents for the role that they play in their families and their communities. So thank you very much. The business of the day. Well, I'll start with apologies, and I have apologies for lateness from Mayor Southgate, Councillor Mark, Councillor Louise. I have a full absence for Councillor Milena and Councillor Anna, and an early departure for Deputy Mayor Angela O'Leary. Are there any other apologies? That's excellent, because we are a bit strapped for quorum today, and I'd really like us to be able to complete our business. So I'll move that. Second, Councillor Ewan. All those in favour? Thank you. Confirmation of agenda as is presented to you. And I'll second. Andrew can second. Thank you. All those in favour? Also noting, though, that item 10 is a late report, and apologies from our governance staff for the presentation that was added a little bit later to that. Hopefully you've had the chance to have a look through that now. Any declarations of interest? There being none. Our public forum, we have no speakers registered today. And so let's move now to the minutes of the Finance and Monitoring Committee for the 31st of August 2013. You'll find those on page 6. And there's no items of correction for that. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Moko. All those in favour? Thank you. Page now 12. We're ripping through the agenda today, and maybe that's an indication of how we'll progress. Chair's report, I'll take it as read, but acknowledge that this marks the final committee meeting for the year for our Finance and Monitoring, and I'd like to express my gratitude to Tracy and the dedication of her team. It's a notably hectic period as we conclude our annual report with making those last-minute adjustments for the auditors, compiling the financial data for our LTP considerations and scenarios that we might like to explore, and gathering materials to present at this meeting. So that's a huge workload. I also acknowledge Councillor Moko, who through the misplacement of a comma is now a deputy councillor rather than deputy, councillor Moko. So no demotion in salary for that, fortunately. Look, I'm also grateful, though, to committee meetings for prioritising these meetings and for your attendance. And reward for you being today, certainly, the sweets that sit in front of you. Enjoy those throughout the meeting. And the other matter of note is the recent political changes. They're yet to play out, and we haven't seen the full extent of what that is yet, but there's no doubt that we are facing a new government with new policies and priorities, and in that way that we must remain steadfast in our commitment to serving the needs of our community. We understand what's vital to them and are best placed to deliver for them, I believe, including holding government to account with regard to making their considerable share of what our city needs. So that said, any questions from committee? No? Thank you. Then I will move that the Finance and Monitoring Committee receives this report. Do I have a seconder? Yep. Councillor Moko. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, I beg your pardon. Oh, I'm sorry. I forget there's online folk as well.
No, thank you, Chair. And I'm so gutted. Councillor Ewan sent me a photo of the new me in the seat, and I just love it. It's hilarious. Anyway, I have to zoom today. Madam Chair, great report, and thank you for clarifying, and I know that the General Manager did anyway, our Standard & Poor's rating. I think that was important. But I just wanted to say a few words on your first 12 months in this role, and thank you for being a great Chair of Finance and Monitoring Committee. I think your leadership has helped steer the ship in very difficult times, and I like your pragmatic and calm approach to everything, and I really appreciate that. So to you and to your Deputy Councillor Chair, thank you so much for all your mahi and leadership.
Kia ora, thank you. Thank you, Angela. Deputy Mayor, it's very kind. All right, it was a little after the vote, but we'll move on to the next item, being the Finance and Monitoring. I beg your pardon. Yes, the Capital Portfolio Monitoring. Yes, I beg your pardon. Yeah, that's you, Ian, and welcome to the spooky chamber today. Yeah. We'll get you a hat later, perhaps.
No, only treats.
The meeting is yours.
Good morning, councillors. As you see, I'm sitting here today with Kelly Stokes, who not only is our Capital Projects Director, but as of Friday was the winner of the Leadership Award at the Staff Awards on Friday. And I just wanted to acknowledge that at this forum, so there you go.
Thank you, Ian. I didn't pay him.
I know, she didn't pay me to say that, but that's right. I thought it was worthy to acknowledge that. I mean, the reason we're doing a bit of a duo, and I think you'll find as we go forward in this committee, we will do a duo, because even though this is principally a finance committee, looking at the financial results of the capital program, equally questions always come up around the actual physical delivery and what's actually happening on the ground at these projects. And Kelly's key role there is to deliver those projects, so she is more than able to answer any questions in that respect. So it just makes for an easier flow of information if we're both sitting here rather than just me looking back all the time and looking to my right.
And you're most welcome, Kelly.
Yeah.
And personal congratulations to you on your
Thank you.
So, look, having said that, look, I'll keep this reasonably brief this morning. This is the first financial report for the final year of the current LTP. So it covers a 3-month period to the 30th of September 2023. I'm going to take the report largely as read. I'll just cover a couple of key points I think we do want to emphasise. I would like to emphasise, as you will note in the report, the approved budget is currently been restated to 386. So that's quite an uplift from what was approved in the annual plan. I just want to take you through that while we've got those adjustments. The first thing is, obviously, Council have resolved through previous committees this financial year to add additional budgets. principally around reinstating the contingency sum for peacocks and purchasing land in Rotokauri, and that's added about approximately 25 million to the budget. Equally, we have, through the delivery of the capital program, we're needing to requesting or bringing forward quite a substantial number of budgets that had previously been deferred out into what we will call year 4 next year, bringing them back in to enable the staff to get those projects underway and deliver those. So that's why you're seeing that uplift in the capital program. And again, there's a lot of detail in the report, and I'm happy to take any detailed questions on that. The other thing, just quickly, the capital spend for the 3 months is 79.4 million. Look, that run rate's slightly ahead of last year, and last year we delivered a 321 program. But as you're probably aware, look, the 3 months we're just covering is coming into that winter period, so we're moving into a really heavy lifting construction season. You will see quite an uplift in the expenditure over that period, so that's not a concern at this point in time. Unfortunately, due to LTP work, we didn't produce the program sheets, which you were probably quite used to in this report, and that really was just to give our staff a bit of a breather as they were neck deep in LTP work. So apologies for that. We have retained the risk section. I think that is important to do for you guys. And so what we've got there is we've got 4 projects at risk. I'll let you read those. It's important to maybe acknowledge that 2 of those will subject to further reports coming to the Infrastructure and Transport Committee on the 9th of November, and that's around Turakina Rise, around Rototuna, and the Transport Rejuvenation Project. And then finally, I'll just say, look, the portfolio risk continues to be our current economic conditions, and look, it's not to say we're concerned about it, we're just aware of it, I think, like everyone, and we're just very actively watching that and trying to anticipate what might happen, and then coming back to this committee as soon as possible, or to the appropriate committee if need be, if there's a financial implication attached to that. So look, on that note, I'm happy to leave it at that. I don't know if Kelly wanted to add anything further.
Good summary as always, Ian.
No, so we're happy to take questions. Thank you.
Open to the floor. Questions? Councillor Sarah.
Ian and Kelly, I just had probably a question for Kelly actually. It was just around the actual capital program, and I saw on page 22 of Diligent, 22 of the report, footpath and street furniture renewals, it looked like a sum had been deferred, and I'm just wanting to understand, had we been slowing down on footpath renewals? I just wanted to understand what exactly happened there. Is the same amount of work being done but spread over a slightly longer period of time?
I would need to come back to you, Councillor Thompson, on exactly where they are, unless Chris knows the locations.
I just need to check, but councillors might recall when we did the 23-24 annual plan, we realigned some projects about delivery concerns. So when we brought the report to you for the annual plan, we realigned a number of projects, and in there was about $30-odd million of renewals and compliance.
Right.
We had the view that if our delivery stepped up, that we would be coming to you to ask to bring that forward, and we've had a number of decisions already in the last few months to bring some renewals funding forward, which you've approved, and they're reflected in this report. So I think if that's caught up in that and we're ahead of program, we may come to you and ask to bring that forward so we just don't slow down our renewals and compliance program.
Okay, thank you. Possibly if someone's able to provide an update.
I'll pick that up and come back to you on that one.
Thanks, Chris. Okay.
Sorry, that was the footpath.
Yeah, so that's footpath and street furniture renewals.
That was the adjustment. Yep. Just for clarity for the committee, that was the adjustment that was made at coming out of the final deferral, so last financial year. Yep.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Anyone online with questions? No further questions from the floor? Thank you very much. Early departure for you, and most grateful. Thank you. Very well. So if we go to page 13, committee is being asked to receive the report. I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sarah. Thank you. Not a lot for me to say. As mover, I think it's really important that we get the opportunity at this through this committee to be able to make the adjustments needed in order to fulfil the programs of most importance to our community. It seems that that is working, and that's evident through the adjustments that are made on I'm thinking page 14. So thank you, Ian, for the great work and for your team. Completely understand the pressure that you're under, and so the pretty pictures can be forgiven, the absence of those, and I'm sure that we're just as able to be able to work through the information in your report just as easily. Thank you. Sarah, any comments from you? Very well, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. And we welcome to the Chair, Tracy, with your financial performance and strategy report. Members, page 31 for your reference.
Oh, no. Apparently there's tombstones in front of me.
Yeah, there is. A couple.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if this is a good move or not. Anyway, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So this morning I'm here to present to you the year-to-date results as at the end of September 2023. So from an accounting result perspective, we're currently tracking slightly ahead of budget by about $3 million. The main area that's contributing to that particular result is our gain on our revaluation of our swaps. So it's a non-cash accounting entry that we do, and that gets picked up in that full accounting result. Our balancing the books, so unfortunately we're not off to a good start, and we're already behind budget in the balancing the books calculation by $2.6 million, and that main contributor at the moment is depreciation. So you'll remember at the last June meeting we talked about depreciation and the transport revaluation. So that final revaluation came in obviously after we'd finished the annual plan, so it didn't get picked up as part of the budget. The other thing that will contribute towards that for this year is the amount of vested assets we got last year. So we got $64 million of vested assets, and we had only budgeted for 39. So obviously that will flow through the depreciation as well. I have also been asked by the Chair yesterday to talk about the government balancing the books measure. So going forward, we will include this in the report, and we have got it on screen. It's slightly tricky to read. Do you want to go to the bottom one? Yeah. Okay, so I have also been asked a few questions about this. This is obviously a little bit of a hot topic for us going through long-term plan as well. So fundamentally what we do is we take all of the revenue and then we back out a few things for the government measure. So you'll see that gain on derivatives that I just talked about comes out, our vested assets comes out in the DCs, and then we obviously keep the operating expenses in there. The main difference between the two is capital. So if we think about how we, the difference between our balancing the books measure at HCC and our debt to revenue ratio and what that does. So our balancing the books measure is very much around our everyday expenses versus our everyday revenue. If we have one-off events for a revenue or an expense, we obviously back those things out during the year. For our capital expenditure, all of that is paid by debt from expenses, and any capital revenue that we get through, we obviously then go and offset that as part of that debt. So essentially you're trying to pay down some of that debt that we have. So fundamentally that's the difference between the balancing the books result and our HCC result. Okay, so no doubt there'll be a few questions when we get into question time for that. So There are a few just favourable variances across our revenue accounts and some unfavourable variances in our expenses. So again, an example of this is in our operating and maintenance costs and the transport activity. We obviously have some increased costs, but we've also got an offset in the revenue and the subsidies that we received. So again, it's just having those two things lined up. Next, the next report you'll see will do what we call a revised budget, and we'll change the budget so it has that reflected in it if we can. You'll also note in today's report we have 3 recommendations through to Council to approve. So Part B, 1 and 2 are our normal recommendations for changes in the capital portfolio report and our forecasting changes. But you'll see today we have a 3rd recommendation to approve some additional operational budget of $192,500 so that we can go and complete the by-election. So you'll find the details of that in paragraphs 55 to 58 of the report. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Tracy. I'll go to the board and see Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Chair Maxine. Tracy, thank you. Couple of questions. In terms of vested assets, obviously we got more than we had projected. What steps are we taking to try to more accurately project the likelihood of vested assets? I'm guessing it's an unspecified science because of timing, but can you elaborate on what steps you're taking to try to get more accuracy there?
That's a great question because that's exactly what we're trying to do now for the LTP. So I've got Andrew's team and Blair's team trying to work together to determine that. So obviously there is a flow of events that will happen and they come from the different teams. So you're right, it is one of the most difficult things that we can try and do. We've had it pretty right probably for about the last 4 or 5 years. Last year it felt like it was just unprecedented in the fact that we sort of jumped up really at that last sort of quarter. So it's probably one of the hardest things, to be honest, that we have to budget for and kind of, I guess, crystal ball gaze to determine what that number will be.
And I guess we can't say no to these assets because, in fact, although they appear to be free,
yes.
They immediately have a detrimental
Correct.
effect.
Yes, that's right.
And so sometimes it would be, well, I'm asking, we can't say no to some of them?
No.
Okay. Just worth a try. No, you keep those right.
Yeah.
By-election.
Yes.
So I see the quantum's roughly 196,000.
92?
92.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
A few thousand between friends. I read somewhere else that the minimum amount could have been around 140,000 to run the by-election. Just trying to get my head around why the difference.
Sure.
And I have one more question, Madam Chair, after that.
I have to borrow the money.
Morning, Council. The base cost for running the election, so our direct costs to our electoral officer, are around the 142,000. Our electoral officer, Dale, has given us that costing based on the 35% return rate, and it's broken down in the estimate that he's given us where that funding has to go to. Because you're legally obliged to hold the by-election, respectfully, I need $143,000 approved at least. The remainder is what we estimate the budget to run a campaign and for additional staffing costs for things like promoting the elections at events and encouraging voting, making sure that our ballot boxes are empty and those sorts of things.
We have no choice, so we've gone to, rather than use names, we've gone to the ordinary provider of the election service. Did we go out and get a quote from anywhere else, or can we not do that?
We have a contract
Right.
with election services. We're due to review and go to tender in the new year for a new provider.
All right. Thank you.
Or or a provider.
Right, and so it's your professional recommendation, we give you that extra funds to enable the organisation to run the very best campaign to try to encourage people to vote.
Yes.
Okay. Last question back to Tracy, just on the balancing of the books and the two measures, the government and ours.
Yes.
Staff's recommended process is which?
Our HCC, balancing the books.
How difficult is it to run an illustration of both?
So, no, it's not hard at all. So I was requested at the last Finance Committee to include both in the report, and apologies because I was on leave at the time when this report was put together. So going forward, I can easily, on the page that we have our HCC one, we can just pop exactly that straight underneath it, so you'll always see both.
Right. So that's the government balancing the book results. And I know you've explained the difference, and basically it's how we move the development contributions in the equation, isn't it?
There's some related to the DCs, because we keep a little bit of DCs and put it back into ours to cover consequential kind of operating costs related to the DCs. But fundamentally, it's stripping out anything related to capital out of our one.
Right, which goes, that has to go off debt.
Yes.
And that's
Yes,
why.
that's how we treat it. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Listen, we're going to go online to Councillor Kesh and then to you, Andrew, in your younger state. Kesh.
Thanks, Chair Max. Just another a question from what Councillor Wilson was talking about, Tracy. Do other councils is there a similar practice in other councils where they're running different measures?
So all councils have to, at least in their annual report the government measure. So you'll see this afternoon when we present the annual report to council, the summary report and the annual report, that is included in that particular document. Other than that, councils can report any way they choose. So the most common one probably is the full accounting result. So that's the big one that I talk about. A lot of councils will just do that, and some councils will have a balancing the books measure, but again, as long as it's obviously been approved as part of their LTP, they can choose to measure it however they wish. So our council made a decision in the 2018 LTP that this is the way, from a financial strategy perspective, this measure, our debt and our debt to revenue ratio and our debt were the three particular areas that we wanted to focus on.
Okay, thank you. I had a question. Point 50 talks about the Peacock program contingency budget was approved in September. And then it said it resulted in a breach of our debt to revenue limit. Staff are working to reprioritize the program. So is that happening right now? Is that an LTP conversation? I just wanted to understand that point.
Yes to both. So yes, we're working on that now, and yes, we'll be picking that up as part of the LTP conversation.
All right, and that's fine. And I did have a question on the by-election, similar to Councillor Ewan. The extra 50,000 that staff are seeking, is that? I just wanted to. What is that amount for the normal council election, the one every 3 years? How much do we spend on marketing and staffing for that one?
Councillor Kesh, it's Mish here. We had a budget of 50,000 for the 2022 elections for communications, and we had staff costs on top of that, which I don't have to hand at the moment.
All right. So your opinion, Mish, I mean, an extra 50,000 for staff and marketing, is that a lot? I mean, I don't know the context, but it's one position, which is important, but is that, normal?
The work for the council in running a by-election for one position as opposed to all positions is pretty much the same. All of the costs and all of the effort to do the campaign are the same, so there's no kind of economies of scale. So running a campaign for one is just as much work as running a campaign for 6.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I didn't have any other questions. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kesh. Andrew, just before, if you stay there a minute, Mish, just while you're in the chair, you mentioned, and I'm sorry for bumping you on that one, Andrew, but you mentioned it's based on a 35% return. It's rather ambitious. The costs were based on that. And that I know in a previous by-election the return was less than 20%. I think that was the 2017-18. We've had another by-election since then, which I think may have been even less of a return. How is it that we're being so ambitious about that kind of level of return without putting a more moderate lens across it?
Yeah. I guess when we get the estimate from Dale, he's trying to take, I guess, a middle ground because he knows that this is an unbudgeted expense. If we get a return of less than 35%, and you're correct, Madam Chair, the last 2 by-elections we had were much lower than that. I think they're around the 20%. Where we'd see that, I don't want to call it a saving, but a reduction in costs would be in the return postal votes and a small reduction perhaps in the cost to count as well. So we still have to obviously send all enrolled electors out their voting papers. So that's really where that cost reduction would come in, is in the returns.
Okay, and so while this is quoted figures here, there could indeed be a bit lower of an invoice once it comes to payment in full.
Yes, it could be, but because it's only on those return the cost of the return votes from New Zealand Post and probably a little bit less in some other areas, it's not likely to be a significant number.
Okay, thank you, that answers my question. Councillor Bidder.
Cheers, miss. Yo, Trace. 27 on page 34. The development.
How are you expect me to answer a question now? Okay, sorry, start again.
Mayor as well.
Yeah.
Who's not dressed like that?
No.
Those who cannot see me at home.
Right. 27 on page 34. So
Yes.
DCs.
DCs, yes.
So given DCs are payments for stuff that we've already spent, getting DCs tracking above budget this year, does that mean we might expect less next year?
Yes, so very similar actually answer to what I gave Councillor Wilson with vested assets. It really is depending on what's happening, and again I've seen some years where we've had some really good revenue coming through from it. I think last year we thought we were tracking quite a lot behind the budget, and then we got to the last quarter and suddenly we had an influx of money coming in the door, which is always great for us. But it is really hard. It's another really hard one to kind of track. So similar kind of process, and obviously watching everything that goes through both Blair's team and into Andrew's team and those sorts of things. But it is another really tricky one to budget for properly.
Yep. And 51 on page 37, which is the graphs debt to revenue ratio, and we exceed the limit in year 26-27. So our expectation with the proposed rates rise, that exceeding our limit would disappear with our rates revenue going up, wouldn't it?
Well, that would really depend on everything that you decide in the next 6 months. This will all change. Obviously, as we go through the LTP. So at the moment, it looks like that, and it obviously is in the further years. But it's all obviously back on the table from an LTP perspective.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah.
Bro?
Oh, goodness.
Councillor Pike. Golly, never called
Thank you,
Kelly.
Chair Maxine. I'm just trying to find it, forgive me if I've missed it, but just wondering if there's any reporting figures around cost of compliance and whether this is increasing year on year. Is there any visibility of that through
No.
the reporting?
No. So we would bring that to you during the LTP process when we're then starting to compare from a budget perspective contracts that are coming through or extra work that we have to do. So we would have had that compliance discussion back as part of the annual plan if we'd brought through additional costs that we needed to do. And again, it sometimes depends on the contracts that we have. So and depending on what's coming at us and the timing of what's coming at us, obviously from the government and things like that. So it is all very timing. So there's nothing specific that I'd be able to pull out from a reporting during the year, but obviously we are, that is something that we do as part of the LTP or an annual plan.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Our online? No, councillors? There's not. That's fine, thank you.
Who said finance wasn't fun?
And Councillor Wilson to move. Do I have a seconder? I think Kelly, Kelly, I'm trying to call you Kelly. Emma had her hand up first. Very well. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Max. I will support the recommendations today, including the additional 50,000 to enable a fully funded by-election process. Democracy is not perfect, but it's the best we have, and it is a must that the city goes all out to try to promote and encourage people to vote. Doesn't matter their political persuasion, we need to encourage people to participate in this incredibly important role that city councillors do. I cannot think of a more important by-election than the one that's coming, because ultimately the city is facing significant decisions, and we need a full suite of EMs around the table with life experience to be able to provide a rounded and thoughtful decision-making process. So I think we need to go all out to encourage people. And in light of our current financial position, more and more people hopefully will be encouraged to participate in the process. The second comment I'd like to make is I always find these summaries fascinating in terms of our financial performance. And as I sit here, we're in the first, coming to the first quarter of the financial year, and we're already at a $9.8 million deficit, and we're already 2.6 million more than we thought. And again, that helps us to focus on our financial strategy and the crisis that we are trying to manage.
Seconder? Did you want to make a comment? No. Nothing to say. Very well. Any other comments? Thank you. I'll just add my short thanks to Tracy, and thank you for taking on the request, I think, to show us both measures. I think that's a really helpful thing. I thank Councillor Wilson for reminding us that, and he's asked us before in this meeting about which measure of balancing the books our staff recommend, and it is the one with the stripped out funding, capital funding, so that we can see exactly what our everyday costs are. My only issue with that is that when we go out to the public with that view, it isn't always understood in the same way that we understand it, and that's disappointing. We then get compared with other councils around the country, apples to pears to peaches and whatever other measure other councils use, and that can see us in an unfavourable light. And so for many reasons, that being the major, I've asked that we be able to share both of those things, especially as it's really difficult then to be able to try and explain the differences. And, you know, even members here still, don't get the specifics of it. And so if we're expecting our public to understand that, we're being a little bit unrealistic. So it's my hope that we can do that more often, and it gives our committee a much better way to be able to explore that with our communities. So thank you for that suggestion, Tracy, for taking up that suggestion. Also, in terms of our by-election, I completely agree with Councillor Ewan. It is imperative that we have a wide variety of councillors, opportunity for people to be able to stand in this by-election. And so I'm supporting the full budget and hoping for a 35% return, although I don't hold out much hope for that. Anyway, thank you. And Mayor Paula, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, just been sitting here quietly.
You're looking much better than you were before.
It was a bad day, that one, wasn't it? Just in terms of this, I agree with what you're saying about the balancing the books, and the best thing that can happen in the long term is for local government to get some consistency around the measures that they use. But having said that, I support the leadership we take in being honest about balancing the books in a way that any household might, incomings, outgoings. I get that, and I do think they understand the basics of it. Putting things on, it's like putting things on your credit card. So we do understand that, but I agree entirely with Max. Then no matter what we might try to say, come the LTP, there'll be a table comparing us with all the other councils up and down the country, all of them, in one way or another, especially the big metros. And that becomes meaningless unless you're actually saying the same thing. At the end of the day, we still need to have sustainable funding, and we still need we can't use it to fudge and say, we're doing better than we are, when we know that sustainability is at the core of funding. That's such an improvement, Ewan. So we do need to go there. By-election, we just got to do it right, and that's the absolute, it's democracy, and that's what it costs, unfortunately. And as for the staff, I want to say thank you very much. We didn't expect this report to be pretty and roses, but it had to be, it's raw. It actually helps us to show the public that we're going through really difficult times. But at the end of the day, I speak about, in our LTP, we need to find some balance to get towards sustainable funding. Otherwise, it'd be like doing this, cutting off our own hand, right, going forward. Just look at this ugly thing. But, we have to, so that's it. We're doing what we do right now. There's some consistency of measures. We need to forge forward to a more sustainable way of meeting our everyday bills. We all agree on that. And that will come up in the LTP. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Bang on.
You didn't get the bell. Write a reply at all?
Very briefly. I do want to highlight, and I don't disagree with anything anybody has said, but I do take the opportunity to remind everybody that for every annual report this council has issued, we have used the government's balancing of the book calculation. every one. So every annual report that we've issued and published has included the government's recommended balancing of the books process. So we can't just say, hey, look, you know, we feel we need to highlight this because we haven't used it in the past. We've used it every year since we've been issuing these reports.
If Councillor Ewan is advocating for a skeleton budget this year?
Thank you. Leave the jokes to the chair, if you would. Thank you. Let's now go to the vote then, and you'll see that on page 31. And the mover was Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Pike. You can use whatever you like. Raise your hands. All those in favour? Against?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Now, we're just going to defer item 10. We're waiting on Andrew Merkel, and in the meantime, we'll move into public excluded and then come back when he is available. So I'll move. Do I have a seconder? Yep. Councillor Moko. All those in favour? Against?
Carried unanimously.
Thank you. So just a few minutes and we'll